Well, I'm going to check her out. But one of the quotes that you have in your book, which I wanted to share, which I thought was so beautiful, is nothing goes away until it has taught us what we need to know.
Ah,
And I'd love to know from you, what has your experience so far taught you? Do you think that you've learned it?
ooh, I want to say yes. I want to say yes.
Yes, I
But
want it to be
I
true for
think
you.
but I think things come back around. And I think the biggest lesson in all of this has been, for me, the definition of just robust self-care.
Mm.
We talk about self-care, and it means different things to different people. And there was a time in my life when it meant bubble baths and manicures, right? And facials and fun stuff. But but self-care is one of those things that as we go through life, the definition changes. And sometimes self-care is a 24/7 thing. And other times it isn't so much. But what this whole thing has taught me is developing into my day healing practices. And again, like I do a lot of other things. I do podcasts, but I also have a job and I've got a family. But building in time for things like meditation, for my sound healing practice, for all of the things that I do to maintain self-care for my back, everything from eating right to just, physical things like that. Sounds like a strange answer, probably, but it's like
No.
that has been the recurring thing for me. It's like,
Mhm.
so often I I would feel that my spine was feeling really fragile, and I would just go ahead full speed on 100 different things. And that is not good self-care. And so every time something happens, it is like has been to remind me self-care has to be my every single day. It's not once a week on a weekend. It's not only after 5 o'clock when work is done. It's building small practices into the entire day. And that is standing in your power. And that
Yes.
is self-love. That is choosing love, right? That's like I said, every moment is a choice. It's choosing self-care in those moments is what you need to do. And our society, I think I write this in the book, our society, it does not encourage us to do self-care. It
No.
doesn't. It's like push through the job, work through the deadline, stay late, do 100 things. We're all multitasking to get everything done. But self-care is slowing down. It's taking time to rest. It's doing what your own body needs. Every person is so different. What works for me wouldn't maybe work for you or our listeners. But it is about every one of us tuning into what I call our inner healer, deeply listening. And what do I need in this moment right now? One of the questions, what will make me feel good right now?
Mm. Mhm.
And, anytime I even just have a bad moment, like I woke up the other day and I had a lot of pain from what I had done the day before. It's like, and I was just going to push through some things I had to get through. It's like, no, that's the lesson you needed to learn. What do you need to do right now? Change the day up, change it around, meditate and do self care, like, sound healing or something like that
Yeah.
first, and then go into your day. So it really is about that deeply tuning in to the inner healer. That's been my lesson over and over again. I think I've learned it, but you just never know.
It's so, yeah, it's such an important, it's funny because we throw around words like self-care and people are like, oh, self-care. Like I feel like
Right.
sometimes people cringe when they hear that. Or I teach workshops and sometimes people really struggle with the idea of self-care when there are people who they're serving that are maybe suffering more, working with people with
Yes.
disabilities, for example. If
Right.
people are, there's always someone suffering more. But what came to me when you were talking there was the word neglect. And
Uh,
I was thinking about that rice experiment. I was going to bring it up here on Google, but I'll just sort of paraphrase it. And for our listener at home, I hope I don't botch this. But basically it was, I think Hashimoto, I think was the doctor, and he did the rice experiment where he put like love on some rice and
Oh,
then,
yes.
yeah, hate on other ones. But what
Dr.
was really
Emoto.
Emoto, right? What did I, yeah,
Yeah.
Dr. Emoto, thank you. So one of the things that I felt was interesting was that there was also rice that was completely ignored, which rotted as
Hmm.
well. And so
Hmm.
when you're talking about
Yes.
self-care being a big journey, it's funny because I've never really looked at it in terms of, well, when we aren't doing that, we are neglecting ourselves. And when we are
Yes.
neglecting ourselves, what happens? Our bodies call out for attention.
Yes.
And how are they going to get our attention? By giving
That's
us
right.
aches and pains and these things that we
Yeah.
need to sort out. Yeah.
Yes.
And I was like,
Exactly. And I love that experiment. You know, he did experiments with water and snowflakes, and
yes,
kids in schools, you know, then began doing experiments with plants. You know, one plant they spoke to lovingly, the other one they spoke to, you know, very meanly or hatefully or neglected. And that one died, you know. And so, like,
yeah,
everything is energy, and we are energy beings, and our bodies are 60 to whatever percent um,
water.
water. And these experiments were done on water. So it's like, yes, how we talk to ourselves, like, and that gets back to the mind is your medicine, and how we speak to ourselves. And like, there was a time when my knee would hurt and I would curse at my knee. And it's like, when I was young, and it's like, that's terrible. Like, why would you speak to yourself that way? Now, you know, I say, oh, sweetie, my poor little knee, did I kind of overwork you? You know, I have
Yeah,
a more gentle self-talk
yeah.
than I used
What are you
to.
trying
And
to tell me here, little knee? Like, am
that's right.
I afraid of moving forward on some level? Or,
That's
you,
right.
you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Gabor Mate in his book, The Body Says No, talks about this, and
Mm,
how when we are not our authentic selves, when we do not say no, when our intuition says, nope, I really don't want to do that project at work, I should say no to that, and we do it anyway for another reason, and we do it, and the body starts sending these signals. It can be pain, it can be sickness of another kind, and they get louder and they get louder and they get louder. That is sort of his point in that, one of the big points in that book. Our bodies speak louder and louder to get our attention. And
mhm.
I look to 2016, the year that the disc ruptured in December. All year long, my spine was saying, oh, no, no, not that big long road trip to Oregon, but I wanted to go. So I did. You know, friends wanted me to photograph a wedding for them. I really shouldn't have. I was in a lot of pain. I did it anyway, you know, because I wanted to, but my body was saying no, and it was screaming louder and louder. And
Mhm.
then I didn't listen, and the disc ruptured. And so, like, I had all the warning clues. I was not listening. And
Mhm.
again, you know, that's a lesson right there. Yep.
And what's really cool is we can learn right now,
Yeah.
and we can learn from this moment forward. We can go, okay, now I'm going to make a practice of actually listening to my body. I remember I said yes to a job and I felt it was like gave me anxiety. I didn't want to do it. And I was like, oh, it's
Mm.
just a certain period of time. And I got ridiculously sick for months and months and months.
Oh boy,
And
there you
just
go.
from something, so, I'm sure a lot of us have these stories where we can go, oh, right. I
Yeah,
remember when I said yes to that thing and my body was telling me not to do it. And I did it
that's right.
anyway. And then this thing sort of happened from that. I think a big
Yeah,
part about it is like, we want to deny what's actually going on because we want to do those road trips or we want to get
yeah,
that revenue coming in, or we feel like we've already said yes to doing something like a wedding or a contract. And so we have to honor our word. But what we're doing again is we're neglecting ourselves and our own truth. And I
yes,
think what sometimes
yes,
is difficult is, for example, I'll just use your road trip idea. If someone really wants to go and do that, but their body is telling them not to, but then the whole family is going and you've got all these things planned. Like, how do you kind
yeah.
of navigate? I mean, and
It's
sometimes we
so
have to do the
hard,
thing
right?
anyway, and then we learn the lesson, and it's like, oh,
That's right.
but how do you avoid that in the first place? Yeah.
Right. That's exactly where I was. That's exactly what happened. But now I'm better at being more realistic about what my capabilities are,
Yeah.
and maybe like some of it's just timing. Like, I was doing one thing after another, and I had a full-time job and all these other commitments, but I just kept doing more and more and more and more because it was all fun stuff. I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Now I'm just a little more balanced about reading what my body wants to do and say, how am I going to feel if I really do that now? And it's about deep inquiry. It's about, saying, going into meditation, doing a body scan. If you're not into meditation, just do a body scan. Where is the discomfort in your body? What part of that? And then say to that, let's say your heart is really racing, and you're trying to make a decision and your heart is really racing. Just get quiet and say, my sweet, beautiful heart, you work so hard. What, talk to me. What's going on? And it sounds funny, but
It's perfect.
it does,
Yeah.
it does really give us, when we're open to it, and when we really get quiet and listen, our body gives us feedback. It might not be an immediate answer, but like a lot of times for me, I'll go into that inquiry and then a word will come to me in my dream about, a certain some supplement I should take, or an answer to a question comes in my dream, or it occurs to me at another time of day. It doesn't always have to be immediate, but the important thing is to honor it. I think our bodies recognize when we are honoring them by taking care of them. And then we get more feedback, if you will, as we continue to deeply listen. That's at
Mm-hmm.
least what I've noticed. It's all about building that intuition and listening to
Mm-hmm.
the heart.
Mm-hmm. And it's also about listening to our own guidance. And you were talking earlier about how what's for somebody might not be for somebody else. And I feel like it's the same with body wisdom, that for some people,
Mm-hmm.
we might get an indication that something is a truth or a no or a yes or whatever. And someone else might get those same answers, but in a different way. So I think a big part of that is,
Yes,
again, coming within and doing the self-care and getting to know ourselves a little bit more. If
that's right.
somebody listening is maybe supporting someone who is suffering at the moment, do you have any tips or tricks on how they can support that person? I know that especially if we're helping people who aren't spiritual, it can be difficult to give some of these subjects if we're even mentioning to people that there might be a lesson within that. Some people are not wanting to hear that.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
what can we do? Is being there enough? Is asking what support looks like for them a good start? What would you recommend?
Yeah, that's a really good start. I have something in the book about this actually, because this really comes up, and it comes up with a lot of my clients too, who are supporting other people who are also suffering. But it begins with talking about, or just raising the question, like, how can I be supportive of you? When you're dealing with somebody else, just engage them in that conversation. How can I be supportive of you? What do you need right now? Just asking those kinds of questions to get a dialogue going. And what I find, I've gone through this with some friends and family as well. Sometimes at first it's like, no, no, nothing, nothing. I don't need anything. I'm not open to this stuff, or whatever. Um, but you just keep asking the question, what can I do that would help you? And if it's not help in a talking kind of way, just talking through what they're going through or trying to support them in other ways, maybe it's bringing groceries or a meal, or that kind of thing. Start with something that's an easy yes, because everybody needs, support at some level. When you're going through something, you need somebody to go get your groceries for you, or bring you a home cooked meal, or
Mm.
something, or just come and sit and listen. And I remember friends would come and just sit at my bedside and just listen, and or them, they would just talk. That just being there for a person is also good, but it helps to start with little things that people can say yes to. And then as you build dialogue over time, introduce some of these other ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oops, I
And
accidentally left the power of now on your bed. Didn't mean for that to happen.
there you go. There you go. Yeah,
Wow.
very good.
I'm not saying that's very discreet or people are tried to give that book to so many people in my life. It's
Well, I'll
so
tell
funny.
you, a number of people have told me that they have taken my book and just casually left it at a friend's house, so that they would actually read it.
Yeah.
And sometimes people do. And the beauty of the book is it's 38 small chapters. You could just open it randomly to a chapter, or you could look at the table of contents and say, oh, oh, acceptance, yeah, or intuition, yeah, I want to read about that. And so these little chapters that are easily, read and digested and integrated and anchored into your life can also
Mm.
be a good way to engage others who are on the journey. Yeah.
In your book, you also talk about Martha Beck's concept of 1 degree turns. So if our listener at home is maybe they don't know someone who's struggling, but they themselves are
Yeah.
suffering or are suffering or are struggling with something, would you sort of give the same advice, which is maybe going within, maybe looking at some of the authors that you've referenced in your book and that we've talked about a little bit today on the show, and how important are 1 degree turns, would you say?
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Um, I just believe that everything in life is incremental, right? And so anybody who's on the journey who is just really not in a good place and they want to be somewhere else, if we like, I would look at my life when I was flat in bed and say, I want, by the end of the year, I want to be able to go on a 2 mile hike with a friend. And like, that was completely ridiculous, right? So, but setting little goals, incremental things got me to the place where I am today, where I'm, much more functional. So whatever the topic happens to be, breaking it down into little bits. If you're not happy, point it in the direction that you're going, and you want to go 90 degrees to the left. Martha Beck, 1 degree turns gets you there over time. And
Mm.
as I would say, everything is incremental. Little bitty changes get us to a place that we want to be. And I would say, the going within thing is important, but find your joy. Where is joy in your life? That was one of the things that I said to myself in terms of um, incremental changes. It's like, how can I bring joy to my life every day when I'm flat on my back, when I was flat on my back? And it's like, okay, well, this is going to be hard. But when you really think about it and break it down, I love music. I started listening to more music. I had my husband grab my Native American flute. I started playing Native American flute a little bit more. I had a frame drum. I could lay it on my stomach and actually play, which was amazing. Um, that's just one example. I mean, everybody has different things that bring them joy, but my point is, find what brings you joy, begin experimenting with little things every day. And if it's something wonderful that makes you feel really good, build it into your everyday. A lot of times what happens is we think it's a one and done. Okay, I found something that made me happy. I'll do that. And then we don't do it every day, right? We
Yeah.
get busy with life, and like
Yeah.
it goes by the wayside.
Yeah.
But the challenge is in the integrating and anchoring it into our everyday lives so that it
Yeah.
does become a practice that brings you joy or whatever. But maybe this time of suffering and health crisis gives a person a lot of time where they could learn a new language, or they could take a bunch of classes online, which is, the beautiful thing about, post COVID is, like, we can take classes with teachers all over the world via Zoom. And so
Yeah.
what are some of the things that maybe a person wants to do and learn during this time? Again, what can I do today that my future self will thank me for, right?
Yeah.
Like build that into your daily or weekly life, and you'll get to that point. Those are the 1 degree turns. Yeah.
So beautiful. And one of the things you said earlier, which is always what I try to share all the time, which is, what's one thing that I can do right now to feel just a little bit better in this moment?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and like you said, it could be those small little things. Maybe it's opening the window and letting some fresh air in. Maybe it's burning a
Yes.
candle. Maybe it's, smelling something beautiful, small things. And like you're talking about, when we add on to these small things, they become bigger things. They become
They do.
opportunities for us to really see the light, step out of where we are and look at, life in a different way, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And getting out into nature, nature is so healing. And we tend
Yes.
to forget that. We get busy with our lives. I quoted something in the book about, it's a ginormous percentage of our time, like maybe it's 90 or 95% of most people's time is spent indoors.
Mm,
And so there's healing to be found out in nature, just in fresh air and sunshine and green things, right? And so as soon
yes.
as I was able to get up and around, that was one of the first things I began to do. Is I just began spending more time outdoors and building that into my life, working outdoors on our deck. Anything I could do to just get out, earthing, putting your bare feet on the ground is really healthy. um, Forest bathing. There are millions of outdoor things that we can do that help us just to. And we were talking earlier about finding our power, finding our center. Sometimes when we're in indoor environments, there's either work or there's family or there's something tugging at us, right? And it's very much present in our indoor environment. But the minute you go outside into nature and begin to take a walk or even just sit on a rock or a chair outdoors, suddenly you are not labeled by what that environment was that you were just in. You are who you are, standing in your power in nature.
Yeah.
And there's something really healing about that as we begin to try to just find a more healing path to integrate into our daily lives. So I always suggest to my clients getting out in nature. And even if it's 5 minutes, the more the better, of course, but even if it's just 5 minutes, it's good for you. And if you
Mm-hmm.
can't be out in nature or you're in a city or someplace where there's a lot of snow right now, you know, you can spend time looking at the sky. You can spend time, if you have trees or whatever, but there's always something to look at. And just taking that moment to step away from our screens and just look at trees out the window. I'm looking at the beautiful trees behind you out your window, and it's like
Yeah.
you could just meditate on that, and I'm sure you
Oh,
do.
yeah. Yeah.
But it is something that is a really easy thing to integrate into our lives that gives us a pause that we can begin to hear what is happening within us.
I
Yeah.
think too, a big part about what you've been talking about just now is about being in the present moment and being here in the
Mm-hmm.
now. And because, when you're talking about nature, I heard like an objection from someone in the world who's like, yeah, well, how's that going to help? And the fact is that our minds want to create bigger problems than
Yeah.
what's actually there, where we know that going out and being part of, what we're connected to, the energy around us is going to serve us, is going to help us. Sometimes a big part of that as well is quieting the mind, quieting the story, quieting the narrative that's telling
Yes.
us there's something else that we need to be doing other than being here in the now moment.
That's right. I love the way you just said that because the other thing is when we don't take that break, often we get lodged in suffering and what a
Yeah.
yucky experience we're going through right now. But if we are, like, let's just say, standing outside in nature, sitting and just being and not doing,
Yeah.
then we have an opportunity to say, in this beautiful moment, how do I really feel? Like, what is my life right now? And if you're sitting out in nature on a sunny day, I know it's winter in most of the world country right now, but you know, if you're let's just say you're outside and you're having a moment looking at nature and at trees, you're not thinking about the terrible situation that you're in. And what I found for myself is, I had this story going, this narrative of I'm in a lot of pain. I'm always in a lot of pain. I'm never not in pain. For a while, that is what was going on. And I found that when I took breaks and I could really be in the moment, I would say, this is really a beautiful moment. I'm actually feeling really good. What about the next moment? And the moment after that? And if we could restring it and restory it, that
Mm.
actually I'm going through a really okay place right now. And the future is looking brighter the way I feel right now. I don't have to go down that downward spiral of, all the other stuff. So that can be a real help. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I wanted to ask you one more question before we wrap up here, which is, I remember, so Eckhart Tolle, and I don't know if you know about this, but and Oprah did this whole series in 2008 on A New Earth, and they have this whole. Are you familiar with it?
I've heard of it. Yeah, I didn't actually see it though.
Oh, it's the best. So I've listened to it like probably 20, 30 times. So it's like all
Wow.
on all on YouTube, or you can search for it. But they have, and on Eckhart Tolle's actually podcast, you can get it there at the very beginning. But every chapter was 1 hour. So they worked through every chapter. And there was this one woman that phoned in or was on the show, and she had lupus. And she was asking, for Eckhart Tolle's advice on how do you, when you're sick or not feeling good, how do you manage that? Because a lot of people are constantly asking about her health. And so it was
Oh,
constantly bringing up the fact that she was sick or not feeling good. And his
uh,
recommendation was that you need to talk about your health with your doctor, but that if people are asking you, can you turn it around and say, yes, it's a good day, or my hands feel strong today, or even asking people to not ask you. And
mhm.
I was wondering your sort of thoughts, and I'm paraphrasing his response, but
Yeah.
I wanted to know for you, I mean, would that have helped you? Did you find that, when we're in the moment and you're saying, what problem do I have right now? Oh, nothing really major. I'm actually okay at the moment. And then if
Yeah.
someone comes in and says, oh, you look like you're in pain, you're like, oh, what? Oh, yeah. Right. I
That's
would
right.
imagine that could sometimes throw
Oh,
you off a little bit.
absolutely.
And just
It,
that came to me and I wanted to bring that up briefly.
I love that. And I think that is such good advice that he gave. Yeah. And so I have a practice where I don't talk about it. Like there was some point very early on, probably at the 3 month mark when I was really miserable. And lots of friends were calling to talk to me to find out how I was, and
Yes.
they weren't seeing me around town or friends from far away. They wanted to check in on me and I'd be on the phone with people. I'd be on the phone all day long, some weekends, and they were asking how I was. So I was telling them not everything, but a
But of
lot of like,
course
oh, I'm
you
just not
were.
feeling well. I'm still flat on my back. I'm
Yeah,
in a lot of pain. It's just really miserable. I can't even
of
walk to the bedroom
course.
door. That story, right? That story.
Yeah.
And I told it in the day over and over again. And my husband came in and he stood at the end of the bed and he said, you have to stop telling that story. He says, listen to you. You're
Yeah.
telling that story over and over again. That,
You're like,
and
but it's the
he
truth.
knows
It's the truth.
it was the truth.
Yeah.
And people were asking, and I loved that
Yeah.
they cared about me so much that, I had so much
Of
love pouring
course.
out. But it is that thing about telling the story that's the negative story. And
Yeah.
it's not sugarcoating it and being false or toxic positivity and saying, oh yeah, I'm just fine.
Yeah.
It's not that, but it's saying exactly like you framed it. Today I'm having a good day, or I've begun to see progress this week, and I was
Mm,
able to do this one little thing that I haven't done before.
yeah.
Or, when I was finally able to get up and around, it's like I actually, and I was still in horrendous pain, but it's like I actually went to the kitchen and I made a cup of tea today. I told one of my friends. So I try very hard not to talk about it because also, which is what my husband was pointing out, words, I say this in the book, words and actions and thoughts are energy.
Yeah.
And if you are putting that negative energy out there, you're attracting negative energy. It's like a magnet. And you keep telling that negative story over and over and over again. And it's better to state what is perhaps positive about what you're going through and not dwelling on it. I think that's what it boils down to. We tend to tell the same story over and over and over again when people ask. And it is about finding a better way, a way to characterize it that shows hope. Because when we tell, it's again, it gets back to, talking to the plants or to the water or the snowflakes, how are you talking to yourself? Are you talking the negativity, or are you saying, today was a hopeful day. I was able to do X, Y, and Z, right?
Yeah, totally. And I know Abraham Hicks, she's often
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about how people are so stuck on wanting to explain how things truly are versus how we
Yeah.
want them to be. And sometimes it can be frustrating because sometimes you want to tell someone what's really
That's
going
right.
on. And I always feel like I'm tiptoeing around certain subjects because I'm like, I don't really want to continue to, perpetrate this idea or put it out there that this is what I'm okay with or whatnot. So I'll cancel it to the universe, or I'll like look for a way of framing it in a positive way. Like, oh yeah, all these things are coming for me any day now, for example.
There you
But
go.
it's sort of a reprogramming that in a way that we have to do, which
It
is
is.
can be difficult, especially when people, if they keep hearing how great you are, they're like, but why is she still in bed? It could be confusing.
Right.
And you're like,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, it is hard. It is a dance, though. It
it's a
is a
dance.
dance.
Yeah.
And it does get to the point where, I, for a couple of decades now, have really been working on making my mind my medicine and not allowing the downward spiral. It doesn't mean you don't recognize that you're having a day that's full of pain or that you're just really, really sick or whatever, but you try to focus on the hopeful things and not perseverate on the negative stuff. Yeah.
And if you
It's a
do,
dance.
that's also okay. You can be like, you know what? I'm just going to embrace the suck today, hold my calls.
That's right. And you know what? At the end of the day, like if I've had a bad day and all I did was complain, to my friends that I happened to talk on the phone to, I give myself some grace and say, you know what? I'm human. And today I was really human in my need to just talk about how shitty this is, basically, right?
Totally. Yep.
I think what we're talking about is the over the arc of our time, what is the dialogue? If you have little lapses of
Yes.
negativity, but like
Beautiful.
what we want to strive for is finding the positive arc of our lives within this healing journey,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that there are good days and bad days, and there are going to be days that knock you down with being sick or down in the dumps or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's okay. We're human. We're human. We're allowed that. We're not allowed to, we shouldn't dwell in it. We don't want to become, like I was saying earlier, I didn't want to become that old, bitter old woman one day. I just had that fear that if
Mm-hmm.
I kept going in the perseverating of the negativity, that I would just end up that person that just always complains. I didn't want to be that person.
No.
That was a choice, can
I
happen
love
occasionally, not always.
I love Wayne Dyer says, in one of his books, I think it was in Wishes Fulfilled, but he's like, I intend to feel good. And I love
Yeah,
that because it's like, yeah, I intend to feel good. That's
that's
what
right.
I'm putting out there to the universe. Kathy, thank you so much for being here today. I've learned a lot. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Is there anything
Oh,
that I
me
didn't
too.
ask you that you wanted to mention? Any words that you wanted to kind of leave our listener with? And also, how can people get a hold of you if they'd like to? And most importantly, pick up the book.
Wonderful. Thank you. Oh, this has just been a delight, Lauren. Honestly,
I
I've loved our
agree.
conversation. What I would say to any listeners that just may be at that place where they just aren't quite sure about their journey, what I would say in parting is this: like, our world is going through a really rough time. These are very, very challenging times for all of us, and it's kind of perilous, what is going on in the world. I
But there's
believe
light. There's light within.
there's light. Every one of us is born in this time right now for a purpose. I believe that everyone has a unique gift to bring forward. And the whole point, I believe, of our lives is to discover what is this precious gift that we have, that we want to bring forward to the world. And now is the time. And so look at your life in that point. You know, you're not here for no reason. You're not here to not contribute. Everybody has some speck of light, that we are each a speck of light in this light that it will light up the world, right?
Yeah.
And we each just have to stand in our light. It doesn't have to be some grand big thing. Just stand in your light, even if it reaches only a person or two. That is a good mission in life. So I would just leave people with that. And thank you. Anyone can get in touch with me through my website, which is sufferingtothriving.com. You can connect to me on social media through that, and you can find out more about the book. And also there are some podcasts and articles that have appeared on sound healing and intuition and lots of interesting things if our listeners are interested in exploring that. Sufferingtothriving.com. Yeah.
And I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Thank you so much, Kathy.
Thank you so much, Lauren. This is great.